Okay, I'm here with Brandon Farley. So tell me about this microphone. This is a Yeti.
Yeah, Blue Yeti microphone for podcasts, videos at home.
Great. So I just thought we should make a film and document your healing process. You had this injury June 4th, approximately 4. I know this because your last message to me was at 2:57, and then you told me by 6:50 something you were getting out of OHSU with this terrible injury, and so today is June 8th, 2020. Do you want to talk about the injury?
Um,
Or
what would you like to know? It's
um,
it's still pretty excruciating. Every time, whenever I wake up, if I get sleep, it's like starting the pain over again. Today, this morning, I had to take the pills in bed to even think about getting out. Because I couldn't move the leg around. Now I can see significant bruising all over, whereas the first 3 days it was like hardly any bruising, but now it's starting to, the dust is starting to settle, I guess, inside, while the abrasion itself seems to be raising more. So
yeah, I'm thinking. I don't like clogging up the emergency room, but it would probably be good to get it checked out. I'm surprised they didn't set you a follow up appointment. Did they say return in 7 days or something to see?
yeah, see a care provider in 7 to 10 days to get the one stitch removed.
Yeah.
He said that he only put one stitch in because it's gonna have to drain out, so he didn't want to close it out just yet. So they're leaving like an opening in there for the drainage to happen, which I saw drainage after I took a shower today. Um,
Right, so you've been rolling around on your computer chair, which is almost like a wheelchair,
yep,
and then
and using crutches when I
crutches. You're getting pretty good at hopping. I notice you're hopping on your good foot.
yeah, it's all right. So far I've only able to make it a block away, um, and it does pretty got some bruises on the armpits from just hopping around on the crutches.
And so this assault, June 8th, came on the back of, was it 8 days of protests that you had attended? So you were pretty much on an adrenaline rush, going out every
Yep.
night, getting all kinds of interesting footage.
I was there every day for 7 days, day and night, and capturing some viral footage like this. The day after the looting, basically the second day of the protests, I filmed a man getting his teeth knocked out by a 14-year-old who's since then been captured and arrested, and that'll be going on Fox News tonight, the Ingram angle. Um, but now that the protests are still happening, I can't even get any more viral footage. But at least there's a lot to, I still have a lot of footage to release. So it's good that I'm rendered incapacitated for that reason.
Well, yeah, it's fun to like try to see a bright side to everything. Did you want to say much about the, I mean, your legal prospects or
Oh yes. Well, yesterday was it yesterday? I,
Saturday?
Saturday. I called Underdog Law. Um, Spoke to Michael Fuller for a few minutes, and he heard the details of the incident. Looked around at my social media, saw some of the images, and basically said that he wanted to represent me. I reached out to him initially, but he was very susceptible to the case, to seeing this out. That he even paid the filing fee, which is over like $600 something or around $600, and I, is working on a contingency. So if and when he wins this case, is only will he get paid. So I'm pretty much, it's an investment that will pay off over time. And I feel confident in being represented by someone who represents the underdogs. And speaking to him on the phone, he's very cool guy. Seems like he wants to see military grade weapons off the streets of Portland. And I before it was just like, okay, the tear gas on the streets, I can handle that. I the issue I had was that some of these tear gas canisters were going under cars, setting them ablaze. I saw one incident where they shot someone just driving up Broadway, a man and a woman who had to run out of their own car, had to desert their car because it was being filled with this tear gas. You see stuff like that all the time, and it makes you think. And also, the homeless people are getting tear gas indiscriminately. Like they're just on the sidelines, not even protesting. So people who are living outside are experiencing the effects of these military grade. Well, I should say banned military grade weapons. And it's time that some people, like me, who are feeling, I guess, the most, I don't know, it's good to speak up and to fight back. I don't think this should have happened to me. I wasn't dangerous at all. I wasn't doing anything wrong or illegal. But from about 5 to 10 feet away, I was shot point blank in the leg with with a rubber encased cylindrical steel object going at full force. They say that these things travel up to 100 miles an hour. The force of a baseball swing, MLB baseball, home run basically. So imagine getting hit in the leg with a home run from, I don't know any baseball players, Mark McGwire, anyone. And if I wasn't 220 pounds, strong bone structure, big muscles, if I didn't have this body, this young, youthful physicality to me, I feel like from that distance and from that force, it would have completely shattered my leg. I would have been even more incapacitated than I am. I might have even, I don't know. I could only imagine. I'm seeing stuff on the news right now. Reporters getting their eyes gouged out with these things. People, being hit multiple times in the meat of their thighs. I don't know. It's just it's a war zone out there that they're not weighing out who's the real threat, and is people throwing plastic bottles at them? Does that warrant these military grade weapons, a response like that? I don't know. I don't think so. Being out there every day and seeing the weapons deployed, I think that's an over response to what is happening. And this is someone, as Antifa is basically number one target in Portland, who's been chased out, of multiple events by them for my style of reporting. I still have to say that the Portland Police Bureau used excessive force, so much so that today I find out that Chief Resch has resigned. She's not on board with any of this. So if your own police chief can't even back what's going on, you've got Ted Wheeler in the park condemning the actions of use of tear gas, yet he is the police commissioner and oversees all of this and could stop it at any time. Just basically airing out his own hypocrisy, pandering to his he's still in an election right now. There's a runoff between Ted Wheeler and Sarah Ionarone, and now with this Antifa presence and Sarah being the official Antifa endorser in the political spectrum of Portland, you got to think, okay, maybe it's going to go in her favor now because of all this.
And for people who don't know, I think I've made a lot of false assumptions about what is Antifa versus anti-fascist. Of course, our entire nation, USA, was anti-fascist when it came to fighting Hitler in World War II. And in that context, the long legacy of civil rights, of course, we are all anti-fascist if we're Americans, in my understanding. But the way the journalist and theorist Annie No theorizes this Antifa as I started to notice it was used almost like as a derogatory slur on Fox News, that designates more of radical, violent, communist, anti-capitalist, willing to engage in acts of violence or acts of violence against people or property to accomplish some kind of total radical destruction and regime change. Would you say that's safe to say about what you mean when you say Antifa versus anti-fascist?
Sure. I mean, I don't know.
Or it exists differently in Portland as elsewhere.
I think some of these criminals are going out and hijacking what used to be a cause for peaceful protesters, but they've but then it's like, okay, now they're going on news sites doing interviews saying that, oh, our sole purpose for being out there is to defend, is to react violently to hostile threats, or to what they perceive as hostile threats. So if it started out peaceful, it's taken a turn, and some people who still claim to be Antifa, they don't wear the masks. They're out there, you know, handing out bottles of water, or peacefully demonstrating and talking about the issues. But when you talk to these masked criminals, the ones who hide their faces, the ones who go out and throw bottles, and you ask them, what are you actually out here for? They're the outliers. They're the ones who they can't tell you. They're just label you a Nazi. They'll label you some kind of fascist, because then that gives them the right of way to attack you and to persecute you, or criticize you. And I notice online that after this attack by Portland Police Bureau, if it happens to one of them, they're completely against it. But since it happened to me, you've got Luis Marquez with ha 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 on his Twitter, retweeting my like it's a joke to them. They're not really down for the cause. Like, if you were down for the cause, it doesn't matter who gets shot. It's still police brutality. I'm still a peaceful demonstrator, a peaceful journalist who's trying to document.
Well, and I've noticed a trend that back when I first emerged into Portland, I was born here, and then I came to live here as an adult around 2005. There was a very strong peace undercurrent. Hippies who burn incense, who fight the war, who march, who feed the homeless. And that was the Portland that I knew and loved. And I fit in a lot of vegetarianism, a lot of Buddhism. So when I've come back and seen these little smatterings of violent militants, my understanding of them back in the day was, okay, they're going to be the people who burn the flags and they mask up and they do a little radical stuff, maybe some graffiti, but they didn't bother me and I didn't bother them, and I could peacefully coexist as a peace hippie. But what I notice now is that the virulent strain of militancy involves, if you're not with us, you're against us. So if I, as a practitioner of nonviolence, peace, veganism, do not want to engage in punching someone, I'm there labeled a fascist because I'm nonviolent. And they don't seem to be making space for the diversity of opinion, such that my nonviolence or my veganism, my spiritual beliefs, which are very close to like Jainism, which is a nonviolent practice, that's not, there's no room for me to exist. And at that point, the point that they say they're anti-fascist, but they're actually fascistly enforcing their violent methodology on people who don't want to submit to a code of violence. So it puts me like in a really dicey position where I don't feel like I fit in and I don't feel like I'm accepted, and I still don't support the violence, even though I sympathize with some of their anguish. Like I can look at it and say, yeah, I'm against racism. I am against fascist control. I'm against neo-Nazis. I'm against white power organizations or misguided people or violent racism or discrimination. But discriminating against me because I don't support violence is another kind of bigotry in my view. So it felt good to get that off my chest. Should we make another one? Do you want to talk some more? Where are we at? 13 minutes.
I mean, this is...
So when did you start using the term Antifa, or when did it come into parlance with you that you understood it to have a meaning?
Well, I guess the first time I ever even thought about Antifa was in 2018, when they started coming to downtown Portland for these violent protests, and I went into the crowd as a journalist and was attacked. I was silly stringed, I was bullhorned, and that was basically my first protest ever. I had no idea what was going on. Then I started going to the Occupy ICE campground.
Yeah.
And I just decided to use the term Antifa. That's what they were calling themselves. And didn't know much about it back then. Actually, I was just kind of getting into this type of politics.
Right. One thing that happened when I came into Portland, and it kind of confused me, is they would frequently use the term, I don't even like saying it, it's horrendous. They would use the term Nazi, but they would mean it to mean like you're the rude person who cuts in line at the store. And I was like, what is wrong with these Oregon people? Like, I heard multiple illiterate understandings of Holocaust or anti-Semitic slurs. And when I first moved here, I didn't know that there was a large, like, neo-Nazi problem emergent in the Northwest, because I grew up in Tennessee, and there's certain ways I'm never understanding what's going on in Portland. But what seems to me so disastrous with this current emergence of really young so-called Antifa people is they use Nazi very loosely. They could use it against a peaceful person who doesn't hold any Nazi viewpoints, and they do mean it in a more, they mean it in an ahistorical context that I think is ultimately hurtful to Jewish people, to Holocaust survivors, because they are using it and abusing it as a rhetorical device to bludgeon people, to demonize people, and they're not allowing people to have any due process or freedom of thought or freedom of understanding. Like, to falsely call somebody a Nazi is a very horrific thing, like promoting genocide or eugenics or mass murder or extreme violence. And I certainly don't espouse any of those views, and I think people are sometimes unfairly labeled because of what is more of like a linguistic device that is used much as they use a grenade or a rock or smashing a window or graffiti. It's this aggressive language that puts a target on someone's back, and I've seen them do that to you, Farley, and I don't think it's true. I mean, you're not a Nazi.
No.
Yeah,
I'm
but
anti-racist.
you're anti-racist, and by coincidence, you're the father of two black children, one of whom is deceased. How does that, I mean, if you don't mind if I ask, it's really personal. How does that impact you as a father of a black child to be slurred in that way?
Well, when it happened, when I was, I would say day zero of the protests, before it really started to kick off, this is when they started to form tents outside the Justice Center. You went up there just to take pictures of their signs, completely peaceful. You were in the middle of the street, but they started to basically intimidate you to back off. To which I got, I started to pursue the ones who were acting intimidating, and one of them came up to me and called me the N-word. This is a white protester at a white Antifa protester at a Black Lives Matter event, calling me the N-word, and it didn't really click because it was kind of under the breath. Like, I was focused on getting away from the threat at the time, but when I reviewed the video and it set in, I'm like, you have no right to say that word, and you are rightfully ostracized from your pack now, as Luis Marquez, though he is a scumbag, did the right thing in calling him out online and in a video for his use of the N-word. It's not okay. It offended me. It offended me to my core because I do have a black family. I have black children. And anyone who uses that in that context, black people are, totally fine.
What kind of bothered me, not to put words in your mouth, but they're basically denying you the right to be a part of a civil rights movement. I'm there in solidarity. I have black cousins. I have hundreds of videos pertaining to Ferguson, Janelle Monáe, Teresa Rayford, Don't Shoot PDX. And I, as a female videographer, get called the B word, which is misogynistic. I get chased by this N-word screaming white guy who's frothing at the mouth. I felt completely unsafe. I felt completely under threat of misogynistic violence. And then when I proffered that, no, but you have black kids, you shouldn't have to be interrogated. It's not an inquisition. You shouldn't have to say, oh, well, I have a black friend or a black kid or a black neighbor. Please, can I support black rights? We're all in the same struggle, which is justice for George Floyd.
Sure. and they're even attacking black peaceful journalists like Eli Ritchie, who is one of very few out here who has registered by the Secretary of State a black-owned business, Hightower Productions, and he's just out there trying to make it, and here they are stealing his camera equipment, and
Right.
and I've filmed with Eli Ritchie. I actually have black friends, unlike Antifa. They don't go out there with other with a diverse cultural showing. It's just mostly a bunch of upper privileged white kids.
And what was that tweet you pointed out that Teresa Rayford pointed out?
That she put on her mayoral account. Antifa is anti-black. Many of the Antifas are anti-black.
Right, and I think in as so much as they're
Paraphrasing, but
control freaks, they basically only, if they are allowing any minority to be a part of their all-white anti-fascist movement, they want to police that person's ability to communicate. So anybody who's an independent journalist has an independent voice. Like for instance, when I chased down the Confederate flag saying, what the hell is this racist flag doing in Astoria? It was a media scandal. It was tons of news articles. I was very proud of my work because it was just my gut reaction. What the F? But when a black friend says, hey, you know what, you're going to cause a backlash where I, as a black person, will be exposed to more violence, I'm like, hey, well, I didn't think about that. I was not in any way trying to cause a black backlash on the black community, but I appreciate black voices, and black voices need to be a part of the dialogue. And so long as these like control freaks that are trying to strangle you with your own camera strap a couple nights ago are controlling things, I'm not welcome. And no matter how many hundreds of videos I have, I'm not welcome. Even though I used to be welcome, but I'm not welcome now. Well, I guess we're probably close to 20 minutes. I think we should stop it here. Thank you, Farley.